is Jay. Welcome to the Digital Age Show where marketing meets results. Each week, there's a podcast and which we record with the industry leaders where we sit down with them, share proven strategies that have already driven online success for a lot of businesses out there. So get ready to transform your digital presence. I hope you enjoy the podcast. So, hey James, welcome to the Digital Age Show. Thank you for giving me your time and enlightening our audience with your book. So, guys, James is an author of a wonderful book called Brain Glue. And yeah, he'll be telling us more about it. So, yeah, James, can you please let us know what you do or what you're doing currently and something about your book?
Sure. Um, I ran an advertising agency in Canada, in Montreal, and I won major clients like Kraft Foods, Timex watches, Seagram's. The world headquarters is there. And I had an opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign. I've discovered something that's blowing people's minds and radically turning simple products and services into blockbusters of success. And I mean blockbusters. Billionaires use this. I have Warren Buffett. I worked with his team, who when he was the world's richest man, on his way to becoming the world's richest man, actually. I worked Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He sold 500 million Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and more than 60 other bestsellers. And he read my book, and it blew his mind. I seem to have discovered something that is an essential part of how you sell and persuade. And so when I had an advertising agency in Montreal, I had an opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America. And I came up with an ad with powerful, logical reasons why you should not do drugs. And I lost. And what I lost to was this guy. They created an ad of this guy who was holding an egg and said, "This is your brain," and then cracked the shell and dropped the egg into a sizzling frying pan. "This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?" And it was profound.
That's awesome.
And when people saw this, there are two things that I recognized. One is it was infinitely more powerful than anything I knew how to than my ad. But the second thing I realized was this was emotional selling, not logical. I had logical reasons why you should not do drugs, but this emotional selling was infinitely more powerful. And so what I did was I wanted to learn how to do emotional selling because they don't teach it in school or in libraries, anything like that. And so I created a passion box. I put it right next to my computer, and I would write on a 3x5 card, "Your brain on drugs," so I would remember the ad. And anytime I saw something or heard something, a quote from a famous person or whatever that was emotional, I would put it in a box, or I would write it down or tear it out of a magazine and put it in the box. After 10 years, I moved to Southern California, and I met John Gray. And John Gray was an author who was telling me that he wrote a book called Men, Women, and Relationships. And people who read it said it was the most profound book they've ever read on relationships. It changed their life. It was just fantastic, magnificent. But almost nobody was buying it. He was struggling to get somebody to buy it. There's a whole story behind this, but eventually he came up with the name Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and sales skyrocketed. He went from 20,000 to 50 million books sold. 50 million books were sold just because he changed the title. And I realized, like, wow, took his book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I was going to put it in my passion box. But then I realized, wait a second, this is a metaphor. Men are not really from Mars, okay? I mean, I think women think we are sometimes, but it's a metaphor. Basically what he's saying is men and women are so different that sometimes it's like we're from a different planet. And so I realized, well, metaphor, is that the secret to emotional selling? And then I started thinking of the guy with the egg and the going into the frying pan. That's a metaphor too. This is not your brain, it's an egg. Okay. But so is metaphors the secret? So when I got home, I took the passion box and I dumped it on my bed to see if everything was metaphors. What I discovered was metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers at the heart of emotional selling. I thought my brain was going to explode. If I just discovered something that nobody else has discovered, which is true, I did. So I started applying it. One of the first client I applied it to was a construction company, 3 partners who after 10 years had $2 million of sales. Not bad, $2 million of sales. Ha! I say that kidding. In 1 year, I took it from 2 to 10 million in sales applying Brain Glue, and they reached 32 million 2 years later. So they went from
Awesome.
2 million to 32 million by using Brain Glue. So there's a famous story that I love telling. There are 2 of them actually, but one is we have a TV show in America called Shark Tank, and there was a mom and son who loved the show Shark Tank, and they were working, he was working for a company, whatever, but they were talking about the fact that how wonderful it would be if we could invent a product and be so successful, we would get on Shark Tank and they would make us millionaires and very successful. And so they're thinking like, what would be a good product? And it took them about a month. And the mother was constipated. She had trouble going to the bathroom. And so a doctor told her, when you're on the toilet, if you raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the ground, it changes the shape of your body and makes it much easier for you physically going to the bathroom. Now, I don't want to get too much into it, but this became a fabulous product. And so she tried that and it worked. And so they started thinking, what if we create a little stool, a toilet stool, that when you're sitting on a toilet, it wraps around the toilet and you can slide it out and put your feet on it. Okay, that was really good. So they found a manufacturer. They went online and they found a manufacturer to make these plastic toilet stools. But they realized we don't want to call it toilet stool. That's not a good name. Nobody's going to like that. And so, we need a good name. What's another name for toilet? Potty. We have porta potties, things like that. Potty, okay. And when I'm sitting on the toilet, I'm kind of squatting. Squatty potty, okay. Squatty potty sales exploded. They passed $100 million of sales within 2 years. And this is a mom and son with no business experience, and yet the name. I was in the hospital 3 months ago getting heart surgery, heart bypass surgery. Not fun. And I was talking to a nurse, and a nurse said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I wrote a book called Brain Glue, and I started telling her the story of Squatty Potty. And she said, I got to tell you this. She said, I'm a nurse, and I know that when you go to the bathroom, you should raise your feet off the ground, okay? And so I have a little trash can, a small plastic trash can, and I put my feet on that. But I was in a store, and I saw Squatty Potty, and I loved the name so much, I ended up buying it. I said, you already have something like this at home, but you bought Squatty Potty just because you love the name? And she says, yeah, that's right. And so, awesome. I mean, can you imagine, what if you invented a product that was fantastic? Your biggest competitor, someone you don't like, steals your product, and they make a fortune while you starve to death. Wouldn't that be fun? No. Well,
I understand. Yeah.
Post Cereals competes with Kellogg's. Okay.
Yeah.
And cereals. And so the head of Post Cereals and one of his key people decided to come up with this square little cake that you put strawberry, blueberry, raspberry jam inside it. And then you put it inside a toaster. When it comes up out of the toaster, you have this nice little cake. And they decided to call it Country Squares. 3 months before they launched it, he promoted it to the media saying, we have this new product. Look at this little square that comes out of the toaster. It's really wonderful. And we call it Country Squares, and we're launching it in 3 months. The head of Kellogg saw this and went, oh, guys, and it got all his people. We need to create a product just like that. He's launching it in 3 months. We got like a short period of time to invent that. And so his people figured out how to make one. And he said, we need a better name. Well, the first thing is it pops out of the toaster. So we should call it Pop Something, okay? That's called sense elevation in Brain Glue, which is you take a sound or a feel or a smell or something and you use that in it. So he said, pop. It pops out of the toaster, pop. And then back then, famous artist Andy Warhol was throughout America, but around the world, was pop artist. He was called pop art, and the term pop art was very powerful. So when you take that word and use it, it's called anchoring, where you're going to take something that's already in people's minds and you're going to use that. And so he said Pop Tarts. Let's call it Pop Tarts. And of course, let's launch it 1 week before Country Squares gets launched. Like, of course, okay, that's the mistake. Don't tell your competitors when you're launching it.
Yeah.
Their sales skyrocketed so much it became the hottest selling product that Kellogg's had, and they ran out of product. So they ran newspaper articles saying, we apologize that we ran out, but just hold on for a couple of days and we'll get more Pop-Tarts inside the store. Nobody bought Country Squares, and within just a few months, Post stopped selling Country Squares. Pop-Tarts, I was reading last year alone, they sold 3 billion Pop-Tarts. Okay. Now he stole the product from the other guy, but he had a better name. And that's why we understand, like, if you have a name that triggers their brain triggers, and if you can activate the brain triggers, you have a better chance of selling your products or services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So is it why the book is named Brain Glue? Like, you'll immediately people it was a catchy name. So it keeps up in the mind, like, oh, okay, the book is called Brain Glue, it has to do something with that kind of stuff. Was that the inspiration? Yeah,
absolutely. So what Brain Glue shows you how to create a name that sticks to the brain like glue, because there are two reasons. And the first one is we are overwhelmed. Our brain is overwhelmed with advertising, the things we think about, our families, whatever else it is, and we're thinking of all this stuff. And so if you're trying to sell something, you don't realize it because a person looks like they're listening to you. Oh, okay, Jay, yeah, okay. But only part of their brain is listening to you. The rest of the brain is worried. Is it raining outside? Did I forget to close the windows of my car or my house? Did I just lose a client and now I'm really struggling? Did I just win a client? How are we going to serve? I mean, is my family, is my wife or my husband, are we having a fight? And then suddenly you show up and you start trying to sell your product or service. What we need is something that wakes up the brain. So I go, what? Oh, what? Tell me more. What? And if you can do that. So I have a television next to my computer. And I normally don't have it on, but I had it on one day. And I'm doing work on a computer. And they're selling a product called Blue Emu, which is a cream that you put on your joints, and your elbows and all that. Athletes use it a lot, and it makes it so you stop feeling pain. And so they had a famous baseball player who was talking about it and doing the ad. I wasn't listening. I could care less. I don't need it. I don't have a problem. But as I'm doing the typing on my computer, I suddenly hear him say, Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. And I went, what did he just say? And from that moment forward, I was watching the commercial. Okay, it works fast and you won't stink, because stink is a trigger word. We have famous movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Ugly is a trigger word. We have Richard Branson became a billionaire. How did he become a billionaire? With virgin, the word virgin.
Yeah.
Virgin. He dropped out of school. So he never finished high school, and he borrowed money from his dad, and he started a magazine to promote people in the music industry. He had so much success with that he and one of his friends said, well, we should start a record company, which actually became successful, but we should start a record company. But we don't have a lot of money to spend, so we need to come up with a good trigger word. What would be a good trigger word? How about Virgin Records? They won the Rolling Stones, and other famous groups became his clients, okay? Why? Because of Virgin. So he went, look, this word virgin is really powerful. He started trademarking all these other Virgin. Now he has Virgin Airlines. He has Virgin Galactic. He has Virgin, ships. He has just so many, all these Virgin Construction Company. Somebody who lives in Texas was telling me that there's Virgin Hotels. I didn't know that, but they're all over Texas, and it's the name and the logo. And he became a billionaire by using a trigger word. And again, it's, we need to present our product or service in such a way that it wakes up the brain and they go, whoa, what's, like you said, brain glue, what's that? Huh. And what you want, all of us want is, if we're trying to influence, persuade, or sell, we want to wake up the brain so that people are focused on us and will listen to what we're selling. And that's basically what Brain Glue is focusing on. I've identified the 14 brain triggers that are the most powerful brain triggers that wake up the brain. And in fact, let me just give you this one thing, because it works in persuasion. O.J. Simpson was an athlete and a movie star, okay, in America.
Yeah.
And he suddenly went he was arrested for killing his wife and her boyfriend, okay? And there was lots of evidence against him, but they had this one thing where they found a glove that they believed belonged to the murderer. And so he faked it because he's a good actor. And they said, let's try on his glove in front of the jury. He tried to, and he showed that, it's really hard to put on. Okay, actors do that.
Yeah, acting, yeah.
But his attorney was named Johnny Cochran, and Johnny, right at the end when they're talking to the jury, he says to the jury, if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. Okay? And so they acquitted him, and everybody was amazed because it was all over American television. Like, people were watching it every day, the trial, because he was famous, etc. And so two of the jurors were asked right after the trial, with all that evidence against OJ, how come you found him not guilty? And one of them said, well, the other one nodded her head in agreement. Well, we knew if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. The glove didn't fit, we had to acquit. Rhyme, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, rhyme is really powerful. There was a competitor to Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread invented sliced bread and became the largest selling bread seller in America. Well, competitors came up with a slogan that caused them to almost go bankrupt. And it was, the whiter your bread, the quicker you're dead. Okay? And there was an illness. We had COVID, okay? Well, they had pellagra, which is an illness that you need vitamin B3 for, which comes from niacin. Now they add niacin to a lot of foods, so we have vitamin B3, and they've overcome it. But with Wonder Bread back then, when they bleach it, it eliminates a lot of the vitamins and minerals. And so that's why the competitor said, hey, the whiter your bread, the quicker you're dead. And almost overnight, Wonder Bread almost went bankrupt. Now Wonder Bread then invented putting, vitamins and minerals in the food, and it helped them come back. They never became dominant, but they did come back. But yeah, so rhyme is one of the tools. I mean, these are powerful tools. And when people hear this tool, they hear examples of it, they realize, whoa, this is powerful. I mean, let me give you some examples of rhyme, okay?
Yeah, sure.
But rhyme is just one of 14. Squatty Potty is a rhyme. Famous Amos Cookies is massively successful. He didn't have a lot of money, and yet he became a multimillionaire. It became a massive success. We have 7-Eleven stores, rhymes. Is it a coincidence? No. We have Reese's Pieces, Slim Jim, Jelly Belly. We have Pooper Scooper. It's for picking up that. Shake and Bake, Lean Cuisine. Is it a coincidence that we have they come up with rhyming names? No. It's not a coincidence. They recognize that rhyme is one of the powerful tools that makes it easier to sell your product or service.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So, yeah, you have worked with like emotional triggers and everything. Is there anything like there's what you can call a common factor that you have been watching along all these years, like one powerful emotional trigger that makes the customer want to buy things faster?
Well, I'll give you 3 basic ones, but there are 14 and they're all powerful. Okay.
Yeah,
The
sure.
first one is a metaphor. You come up with with a name that it's just like what, okay? Your product or service is just like what, okay? And describe that. I'll give you an example of somebody who came up with something very unusual. This guy, Paul Tran, came up with an electric razor that shaves man's private areas. I don't want to get too much into that, okay? I never bought that.
Okay.
but he wanted to come up with a name that would not be offensive, but would still help people understand what the product is. So he thought it's just like a lawnmower. Why don't I call it the lawnmower? Okay, he called us a razor lawnmower. He actually changed the
Okay.
name of his company to Manscaped. We can landscape a man with the lawnmower. Okay. Well, I was in a store with my wife, and they had a big poster, and it said the lawn. It's a white poster. It said the lawnmower with an arrow, and it showed the electric razor. And it's like, what? And I went up there like two other people were, and I started reading underneath it. This is an electric razor for men's private areas, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, fascinating. So I never bought one. Okay. And if I bought one, I wouldn't share it with my friends. Let's start there.
Definitely.
But if I bought one, I could see calling my friend Joe and say, hey, Joe, guess what I just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, you have to mow your lawn? No, it's for shaving man's private areas. I could hear him start laughing and tell his wife, hey, Mary, what? Guess what James just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, he needs to mow his lawn? No, it's for shaving his private areas. I could hear her laughing and telling other people, and it becomes viral. Okay, so metaphor is one of the things you want to think of. It's just like what, and be as crazy as possible. You want to open up your brain, because when you're brainstorming, you want the greatest ideas, and you might use that idea, or it will get you started, and you'll think of a good idea. It's just like what, like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Jack Canfield wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's not chicken soup when you open the book. He was telling me that when he wrote the book, he was going to call it, his book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, he was going to call it 101 Motivational Stories That Will Change Your Life. Okay, logic. But it was bothering him. He said, it just sounds like everybody else's book. And it took him about a month. And one day he woke up and he said, when I take chicken soup, it makes me feel good. Maybe I should call it Chicken Soup for the Spirit. Doesn't sound perfect, but I like that idea of chicken soup for the spirit. He said he had a weekend of sleepless nights, and then he said SOUP, soup, SOUL, soul, chicken soup for the soul. That works better. And that's alliteration, the repetition of sound. Like we have Best Buy, PayPal, TikTok.
Right.
If they call TikTok Chinese social media platform, you think it would be as successful as TikTok? No. And is it a coincidence that they use alliteration? No, they understand alliteration, which is another tool. Alliteration, repetition of sound can really really help you. In America, they had an election with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden's team came up with the slogan, "Biden's Build Back Better." Buh, buh, buh. You think it's a coincidence they use alliteration? No. And then Trump came up with "Make America Great Again." Good, great again. Okay, alliteration. And so experts, and I help them with Brain Glue, a lot of experts recognize that alliteration, the repetition of sound, can be a really powerful tool. And rhyme, of course. And so those are three good ones to start with, is metaphor, what's in my product or idea is just like what, and then alliteration, which is the repetition of sound, and then rhyme. So those are three good ones to start with, but there are lots of them. There's Richard Branson used trigger words. There are certain words that are that wake up the brain, and so they could be really powerful too.
Awesome.
In fact, I'll give you just one last one, but there was Carrie Smith had a manufacturing company in America, and then he ended up buying a friend's company that made fans, really large fans, that are used in farms. In a barn, if you have horses or cows, you're not going to put air conditioning, you're going to put a fan, if it's really hot in the summertime.
Right.
And so he had really large fans, and he called it, I have to remember the name that he called it, but it was HVLS fans, high volume, low speed fans. It didn't turn very fast, didn't use a lot of electricity, but they're very large fans. Okay, HVLS fans. And one of his friends said, HVLS fans, I don't get, what is it? And he said, he was telling his friend, it's a big ass fan. These are huge, big ass fans. He said, big ass fan? How come you don't tell everybody that? Why you tell them HVLS fans, high volume, low speed? Tell them it's a big ass fan. So he said, So he ran an ad for big ass fans, and suddenly sales exploded. So he decided to change the name of his company and the Big Ass Fans. And he used a donkey, which is an
Okay.
ass, with
Yeah.
his butt facing us, and his head off in the distance, turned looking at us, and that became his logo.
Yeah.
And he had the company for 15 years, and then he sold the company for $500 million. And one of the things that happened was sales exploded, and he started adding other products. And then he realized, wait a second, these products are making me stop thinking and focusing on the fans themselves. Let me stop selling everything and just sell lots of different types of fans and just call it Big Ass Fans. And the sales exploded. So yeah, so trigger words are really really interesting.
So, do you think it is ethical to use like trigger words or brain science basically to keep products more addictive? Do you think it's
Yeah.
ethical way? Yeah.
Yes and no. And I want to say this, okay? So when I heard the story and I learned the story about Big Ass Fans, my book has had 3 titles. The first title was Sell More, Dump Your Half-Ass Marketing Strategy, because I like to ask. I would not use that word. So I started advertising on Amazon, and Amazon sales went well, and then they stopped, and I got notified by Amazon and said, you have a swear word in your title. And so because of that, you can advertise, but you can't advertise on Amazon. We're not going to allow you to have a swear word. So I'm like, oh no. And I have all these reviews and everything. The book was doing really well. I have to start from scratch. So I begged them, if I change the title, will you keep all the reviews and everything else? And they said, we don't normally do that, but okay, because we're forcing you to change the title, we'll let you do it. So me, like an idiot, I came up with a logical title, and it was Sell More with the Right Brain Marketing Strategy, which is a long title. People couldn't even remember the name. Sell
True.
more with the right brain marketing strategy, right brain or the emotional brain. So it started selling. But when I met Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, he sold over $1 billion worth of books. He told me, I love your book. I'm forcing everybody in my company to read it and apply it. This is so good. But it's a stupid name. Your whole book is about brain glue. You need to change the title to Brain Glue. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'll give you all the testimonials you want. You can interview me. I love your book. It's one of the most important books I've ever read, ever. But you have to change the title to Brain Glue, because the whole book is about brain glue. And I was like, oh, do I really have to? And he said, yes. But he's right, But we're logical. The best people who have the best products or services are logical. We come up with a solution to a problem or a product or whatever, and we're logical. But when you're selling, you have to be emotional. And that's what Brain Glue is focusing on, is how do you come up with an emotional way to sell your product or idea?
Correct. So, is there any like what we can say? Is there an example that uh, you the product started with a bad name? Obviously, you gave us 2 examples, but let's consider the product started with a bad name, and then they had to rename it. Let's consider uh, a current brand. Let's consider Coca-Cola for an instance.
Mm-hmm.
Using brain science, would you try and like change the name, change the name to something new, or would you suggest to keep the name going as it is for a traditional brand, for a brand that has been in the market for long and has created its audience? So is it
Yes.
recommended to change name, or like it should
Well,
go on as it is?
well, we have 2 examples. One is, yes, people change the name and it becomes more successful. But also, there are cases where people don't want to change the name. So instead, we come up with a slogan. And then the slogan is so powerful that people remember it. Bob Parsons started a company called Jomax Technologies, which is how to build websites. and
Okay.
people loved the service that he offered, but almost nobody was buying the product. It was like costing him a fortune,
Mm-hmm.
his service. So he changed the name. First, he said, "Well, I like alliteration, repetition of sound. So why don't I call it Big Daddy, Big Daddy websites?" And then he recognized somebody had already taken that name, Big Daddy. So he said, "Why don't I call it GoDaddy?" He
Right.
changed the name to GoDaddy, and sales exploded. Okay, so that was one. There's this guy, Bob Rosenberg, who started a company called Open Kettle. And it was a restaurant where he started offering coffee and donuts.
Okay.
And he came up with this whole idea of all these different types of donuts. But Open Kettle, nobody was like coming to the store and buying his product. So he decided, why don't we call it Dunkin' Donuts? They were putting up the sign Dunkin' Donuts, and just when they were putting up the sign, the line started forming of people coming to his business. So yeah, so changing the name can help tremendously, but you could also come up with a slogan. When I took a construction company, the three partners had a construction company. They didn't want to change the name of their company, so we came up with a slogan. And we actually
Okay.
called it, fire extinguisher for insurance companies. They started winning insurance companies. So yeah, so a slogan can help also.
Awesome. Awesome. So, if you would like to suggest, like, what are some of the emotional triggers? Like, you help in marketing, you help in rebranding, you help brands change their names, and uh, what we can say, take the growth to whole another level. So what was the idea behind Brain Glue? How did it all started? What was the motivation behind writing the book?
Well, it was the two things. It was, this is your brain on drugs, and I lost that, and to that. And then it
Mm-hmm.
was John Gray, who had Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. To me, especially going from 20,000 to 50 million copies sold, that made me realize, wait a second, if I'm in marketing and I don't know why this name worked, this name didn't work. Interesting. I need to learn this because I work with other clients and eventually with myself. I mean, we started applying it to products we were selling and made a lot of money. In fact, it was scary for me initially because I started making over, like $1 million. I was making so much money. I was making more money selling my products online than I was making as a consultant. And I started thinking, have I broken the law? Have I done something wrong?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really, but it's just, when it changes your life so much because you suddenly have all this money coming in, cash flow. That's why I say that people don't want cash. We don't want cash. We want cash flow. Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
nice if
right.
you have money coming in and it just keeps coming in? You can't
Yeah.
even stop it. I mean, that's wonderful.
Awesome.
So
That's
that
right.
got me focused on the power of brain glue.
Keeping the money part aside, what else was the motivation behind writing this book? Was it
Well,
helping fellow marketers, or how did it go?
yes, I do coaching for the U.S. Small Business Administration. I do volunteer coaching for them, and I'll have sometimes 12 or 1,300 business owners and consultants. People who are in marketing or marketing specialists. And I
Okay.
think for all of us, it's if I can provide something that's really valuable for them, and then they come back to me and show me examples, it's just wonderful. I mean, it's just wonderful. I have nonprofits that come to me and ask me for help. I have this woman, this husband and wife who came up with an um, what do you call it? Alzheimer's is a real problem. The illness Alzheimer's, and they came up with a service that has tremendous success for people who have Alzheimer's, and they wanted to call it anti-veg Alzheimer's
Okay.
process, which is to
Hmm.
stop. You don't want a family member to become like a vegetable. But that's a stupid name as I was listening to it. And so I changed the name and they trademarked it. And it's the Alzheimer's wake up the brain process. Wake up the brain process, huh? And so I think that more and more people who are logical and come up with good products or good services or good solutions to a problem, that they could use the help. And that's why for me it's just great benefit to help people by applying brain glue.
So does this work with Does this only work with products which like direct to customer brands, business to consumers, or does
No,
it work with service agencies and everything else also?
correct. Services and everything else. Like the
So,
first company I applied it to was like three guys in a construction company. That's not a product; it's a service.
right,
I have
exactly.
a family, a mom, and her son. You know, she's trying to get her kids to bed on time, and so we came up with a rhyme, and she used a rhyme with the kids, and they got to the kids to bed on time. So this is not that's one of the things. This is not about selling products. We apply it to selling products. This is about persuasion. How do
Persuasion,
you
yeah.
get people to? How do you influence, persuade, and sell? Because sometimes you want to influence or persuade. I mean, politicians use this, okay, because they understand that you know that it's they want something that's going to stick to the brain, because because it sticks to the brain. I'll go back to Biden's "Build Back Better" and Trump's "Make America Great Again." There's something about those phrases, and people don't understand what it is, but there's something about those phrases that make it easy to remember.
Hmm.
Okay. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have is sometimes we come up with a product or a service, and when we describe it, it's complicated. Albert Einstein, who was at the time the world's smartest man, said, if if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you probably don't understand it well enough. And so for us, and that's
Right.
one of the things about brain glue is you need to, no matter how complicated the process is, you need to explain it in such a simple way that people go, oh, very interesting. So I had one of America's leading behavioral management firms, okay?
Yeah.
And one of the services we had, we would help the chief executive officer and his top people to tackle
Mhm.
something bigger than they normally tackle on their own. Okay. But we would explain it to people, and they would, we had fabulous clients, some of the world's most famous clients, but we would explain it to people, and they would just be, overwhelmed. They can't understand it because we'd say, technically, we do this, we apply this with psychology. So then we said, it's like a coach, a personal coach who gets you to do more push-ups. Come on, Jay, 3 more push-ups. We'll get you to do it. Come on, 2 more push-ups. You can 1 more push-up. You got it. And he can get
Right.
you to do
Yeah.
10 or 20 more push-ups than you could do on your own. Okay. Well, we would say we're just like a personal coach. A personal coach can get you to do more push-ups than you could do on your own. We can get you and your top people to tackle bigger projects, bigger goals than you could tackle on your own. And because we use that analogy, suddenly people went, oh. And so, we're technical. We like to say we use this and this and this tool, and we talk to this and we did, but they didn't want, people, it goes over their head. And that's why
Right.
when we explain, we're just like a personal coach. We can get you to do more push-ups. It can get you to do more push-ups than you could do on your own. Well, we get you to tackle a bigger project than you could tackle on your own. People would go, that's interesting. And now it sticks to the brain. And when they would describe it to their key people, they would say, it's just like a personal coach. And they would actually use the same description that we use for their people. And that's why, persuasion, we want to understand the brain likes patterns. The brain likes patterns. It likes seeing things that we've seen before. It likes understand. You look at something, you can analyze it and go, okay, that's interesting, and it's just like something else that we've seen. And so when you understand the patterns of how the brain works, it becomes easier to communicate. This is not a persuasion process; it's a communication process. I mean, how many
Right.
times do we talk about something that we're trying to explain to people, and and I'll give you an example with statistics, because we use statistics a lot. So in America, they're trying to tell people that, plastic is a problem because, we go through so much plastic. I got that. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say for or against it. But so they would use the statistic, more than 2.5 million Americans discard more than 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour.
Okay.
Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? How much is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if
Yeah.
I told you Americans discard 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour? That's enough to reach the moon every 3 weeks. Whoa, that's how
Awesome.
much
Yeah.
it is? It can actually reach the moon? I mean, that's how many bottles so now you have a frame of reference. And it's just, that's what Brain Glue is talking about, persuasion. I have lots of people who are not into selling products or services who love
Mhm.
Brain Glue because it's teaching you persuasion.
Okay. That's awesome. You have been studying neuroscience and you have been involved with the field for a long amount of time right now. So, are there is like we know currently AI is getting involved with everything with businesses and everything else. So, is AI going to change the way we name our products?
Well, AI helps us with brain glue a lot. So if
Okay.
you say, whatever your product or service is, come up with the keywords that you want to use to describe your product or service, and then go into AI and say, give me words that are alliteration with this word or this word or this word, and it'll give you lots of choices. Like I have one, I used it for AI, and some of the stuff AI gives you is stupid. It doesn't work. Okay, I mean, I asked, I described brain glue, and I said, give me 100 slogans for brain glue.
Right.
Um, and 99 of them were terrible, but one of them was okay. Brain glue. Uh, I forget what it was, but it was just out of all. I had to go through all this work to finally find the one that worked. You know, so yeah, so brain glue
Okay.
AI can help.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
definitely can help because it gives us a lot of tools, but we also have to understand that one of the things that AI does not understand is what triggers the brain. You could give it a pattern, but you don't. We understand emotionally. I went to. I don't know if you know who Zig Ziglar is or was, but Zig Ziglar was a famous motivational speaker and sales trainer in America. He's passed away quite a few years ago, but he had a great line, and his line was, "Selling is nothing more than a transference of passion." Okay. I was talking to somebody yesterday who had a very logical title that was very complex for what he does. And
Okay.
so we were interacting with this, and we came up. He said he came up with a title, and he said, I love this title. He said I like the other one because it describes it, but this title is passion. Triggers my passion, and that's one of the things that AI can't do yet. AI doesn't know what passion is. It has to guess what passion is. And so you could get a bunch of tools from AI, but you have to decide which one you love. I mean, Squatty Potty is not something that I believe AI would have come up with.
So it's kind of a blend. It's kind of a blend. AI is being we work with AI and form usually form great names.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you want to use AI, but you also want to decide what you love. I mean, there's no way in 100 years I could think of that AI would have come up with chicken soup for the soul.
Hmm.
I
True.
mean, it's just he went, chicken soup makes you feel good. Huh. I mean, that's, you know,
Thinking in a way, yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe with some, but you get used to using. I mean, AI is fabulous because it's a helper for us. It's a
Yeah.
partner for us in many
Mhm.
ways.
Awesome. So as we come towards the ending of the podcast, I would like to ask you if now you have authored this awesome book. If someone our audience is in their early 20s, so 20 to 30s. So if consider a individual who wants to pursue a career in this field, let's say he picks up an industry, picks up a niche, and wants to pursue this career, what would be your suggestion right now for someone starting out?
Well, get my book, start there, and I think the
That's
book
for
will
sure.
help you
That's for sure. Yeah.
because people love the book because it gives you it gives you a description of it, gives you an examples of it, and then it gives you an exercise so you can actually start applying it. That's why people love the book. But I would say start with the three that I was talking about. Start with a metaphor. Okay. If you're working with a client, then you want to say their product is just like what, and be as crazy as possible. That'll start
Mhm.
giving you ideas. Okay. That's the first thing. The second one is alliteration, a repetition of sound. Find the words that you use to describe that product, and then find other words that have the same sound. Okay. And then third is rhyme. Take those same words and find words that rhyme. I say, um, brain glue shows you how to light the fire of desire in your buyer. Okay. Really
Okay.
rhyme.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I heard Jack. I work with Warren Buffett and his team. So Warren Buffett has a famous phrase that uses a trigger word. He said, "Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked." Oh, okay.
Right.
That grabs your attention. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, just you can come up with trigger words that are crazy, and then you could put those trigger words onto your product. And if you put it onto the famous movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
there's a woman who came up with a play in New York
Hmm.
on Broadway, off Broadway, and it was about women's, what women have to go through, some of the tough times that women have to go through. So she could have called it "Women Tough Times for Women" or something like that, but she wanted a name that grabbed attention, so she ended up calling it the Vagina Monologues. Vagina
Awesome.
Monologues. Does that grab your attention?
Yeah,
What? She
definitely. Yeah.
became famous. She was on HBO, home box office television network, doing a special on her. She became famous with this. It's a one-person show, but it had a name that grabs your attention, and that's what we want. Is we want to remember, wake up the brain. If you're talking about something that's very important for you, or you think very important for them, you still need to figure out a way to wake up the brain. Otherwise, we listen to stuff all the time that we don't apply. You
That's
want them
true.
to
Yeah.
apply it. You want them to click the button, especially if we're talking about digital products and services. Click the button. Well, you want them to, to do that action, but it won't work, or it's harder to get them to work if you're just throwing lots of logic on them about why they should do it. You still need to
Mhm.
have emotion.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I have to say, like, this whole session, this whole podcast, my brain was literally glued to everything you have shared with me. The way you have broken down this complex persuasion principles into, like, what we can say, actionable strategies is incredible. Our audience has just, I feel, has got a masterclass of, like, masterclass in the science of influence, and I know these insights are going to transform how they approach marketing, and how important role the name plays in the marketing as well as in the sales and everything, the journey of the product. So thank you for being so generous with your knowledge, and for showing us how the right words can quite literally change everything. This has been phenomenal. So thank you for putting out time for my audience, and I would really love to have a contact point if anyone wants to ask you some questions or ask anything about the podcast. And I would love you to respond to them whenever you have got time. So I'll have that in the description as well. Thank
Well, and I
you
just
for,
say
yeah.
it's fun to find somebody and you bounce ideas off each other. That's really fun. And that's why when you learn brain glue, it becomes valuable. And if they go
Mhm.
to yesbrainglue.com, it's a
Okay.
web page that actually has some information on it that could be interesting for them, but it'll get them to start thinking about how brain glue works too. And the fact that it's persuasion. This is not just about selling products or services. This is about how the brain works, and then how do you plug into those things in the brain. But yeah, yesbrainglue.com would at least be a good starting point for them.
Awesome. I'll be pinning down the link in the description and people can go check that out. So, yeah, that's it, James. Thank you so much for your time. And I would really like to sit again and discuss in more details about persuasion, and just talk about praying too. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Jay, thank you so much for having me.